on the floor of the People's House, to feel that they're welcome on the floor of the Senate, to feel that we have the respect of Washingtonians to run for governor, to run for lieutenant governor, to run for congressional seats, to run as senators, to run for House of Representatives, to run to be a mayor, to sit on the school board, to be as Maya Bellin, an Apache woman serving as the Department of Ecology Director. We have an incredible opportunity here that all of you on this phone have helped us do, and that's clear the pathway for folks like me to come in and recognize who was before me, who led the way, as Senator McCoy, Senator Kaufman, and Representative Stratton did, and who I need to lead behind me, which is the next generation of our underrepresented communities, of our people of color, of my Native American communities, to want to be where I am today, to be where you are today, advocating for clean environment, strong economic decisions, and intertwining our cultural values into the decision-making that we need to make as a legislator within Washington State. This year, I'm very excited to be able to work on several different legislative platforms. One, many of you know, I really have had a vast experience with sovereign nations and state and federal governments on building policies that reflect the people with boots on the ground. And that, with that experience comes the work that I'm doing on moving a carbon tax and using the revenue to create a green bond and establishing a criteria in which this special bond revenue would be used for environmental and climate change resilience, and being able to invest in projects and green infrastructure that really helps us reach our target carbon emission goals. This means that we will have funding set aside specifically for our environmental projects that provide clean emissions, that provide clean water, that provide more habitat, that invest in culverts, that invest in transportation, that if building a criteria around infrastructure that says if you're going to build a bridge, it is going to be green. Similar to what Senator Carlisle and Representative Tarleton did with the bridge that has infrastructure for fish passage out there on Lake Union, where the clean, cool water sweeps through and goes into the Ballard Locks. How exciting it will be to be able to have funding set aside specifically for green infrastructure and providing a criteria around that. We only have a few $1 million in our capital budget targeted towards green projects. If we in Washington State would like our unions to be green, our builders to be green, we like our housing to be green, then we too as Washington State must also invest in those green projects. We want to use the funding and the revenue to invest in our local cities and government so they're able to incorporate and build into their comprehensive plans underneath the Growth Management Act, green infrastructure. Can you imagine if we're able to address the lack of infrastructure funding for our public works budgets and that's being used for our wastewater treatment plants, which literally, if we do not repair our wastewater treatment plants, we're going to continue to pollute the waters, but we also won't be able to expand in urban areas for affordable housing. This is what I'm able to do with intertwining our different bills, our different budgets, and our different projects together. And I just saw the Edmonds representative here also in the chat. And I have to say, I raise my hands to Edmonds because Mayor Hall there is also building one of the first green wastewater treatment plants in the state of Washington. And this is what I'm excited to be able to invest in. You know, as we start thinking about what it is that all of you can be doing here to be able to help us as legislators, it is what you're doing here today. Calling upon legislators and asking us, what are you going to be working on in 2021? Please post your information on your websites. Please mail us the bills and the work that you're doing so we too can take a look at what we can do and how that's going to impact our lifeways. Imagine being able to sit around your kitchen tables and say, hey, I took a look at Representative Lekanoff's work that she's doing, because she's sharing that information with the public and vetting through all the work with our stakeholders. You know, we're not going to stop there. We know that with our elections coming up and with the appointment, the potential threat of an appointing a Supreme Court judge who doesn't align with our values, we're looking at the overturning of affordable health care across this nation. This is a concern for Washingtonians. We have one of the highest rates of COVID crisis within our communities. If that affordable health care is overturned, how are we going to help our underrepresented communities? How are you going to help your neighbor sitting next to you? How are you going to help the person standing behind you in Safeway if we don't have affordable health care available for us? That's going to be a big discussion in the state legislature this year. You know, as we start looking forward to looking at public safety, you know, I'm honored to be able to work with Representative Goodman and Senator Peterson in our two House and Senate groups that involves people of color, taking a look at how we're going to evolve our police protective services for our communities at the local level, the tribal level, the state, and the federal level. This isn't just a concern of public safety for police officers. This is a conversation that involves our prosecutors, our public defenders. This is a conversation of separating our prosecutors from engaging with coroners on making decisions. This is calling upon additional training that have to deal with cultural teachings from our different ethnic communities, but also growing that training to be able to look at how we can provide behavioral health certification, how we're able to look at working with social services within our police forces, and how we bring those departments better together. It's looking at what we're doing out here in Mount Vernon, and that is the Mount Vernon Police Department requires 90 credits of schooling in order for you to be a police officer. If our police officers are going to be investing their lives into protecting us, we should be investing and growing them. To expect so much of them and not be able to provide back, we have to look upon ourselves as communities. It's important for us to look at the education of our sheriffs. Many of you may not know that our sheriffs are not required to have experience, nor are they required to go through the police training at the State Police Academy, nor are they required to have an education. That is also the same requirements as a coroner. As a coroner, I could be 18 years old and I can run and be elected as a coroner. No experience, no education. We're not saying that anyone in the past has done anything wrong. What I'm saying is, what are we going to be doing better in the future? What does the face, what is the action, and what is the future of our public safety going to look like 10 years from now? These are the type of legislative bills and legislative discussions and dialogues that I'm having. It's quite interesting. You know, I come from a world of 7 generations of decision making. Many of you stop and wonder, what is that? Let me be quite frank. To my wonderful and amazing women on the phone or on the Zoom call today, we're generation makers. We're the ones who are babies. We grow them from the inside out, and we continue to raise them as life goes on. We make decisions that is generational, which is quite different in the state legislature of a non-native elected official. We make decisions as elected officials by bienniums, by budgets. For me, I need to know that I'm making a decision that's going to be long lasting. I'm one who will make and build a policy that's been well vetted, where everyone has sat around my kitchen table, from the stakeholders to those who oppose, to those who are supporting it, to those who are by budget makers. I need to know the science, I need to know the law, and then we'll build a policy together. And I need to know what it's like at your kitchen table in your house with boots on the ground. And then I need to come back and evaluate it. I need to understand if I did something wrong, then and it needs to be better, then let's evaluate it, let's make it better, and let's improve it. and then let's look to see how it's going to impact our communities in Washington state, generation, a biennium, 2 bienniums, 3 bienniums down the road. And that's what's important, I think, about having someone such as myself sitting in the state legislature. It's exciting to be able to see what we've done on the floor of the People's House. It is wonderful to sit with different languages, different cultures, different genders. And on the floor of the People's House, we don't judge by who you love, what you look like, what hair color you have. We really look to the experience, and we look to bring out the best of every one of our representatives, and we look to team each other up and create a cohesive plan. And if it doesn't work, and if you don't agree with the plan, the wonderful part about Speaker Jenkins is she will bring you in with a team, and we will continue to have the dialogue to make sure that we are going to be moving and passing laws that fit Washington state's values, are within our budget, are within the law, can be scientifically proven, because gosh darn it, in Washington state, we believe in science. And we're able to do things effectively together. I'm quite honored to have served 2 years with Speaker Frank Chop, who gave 20 years of his life as a speaker. Speaker Chop worked with me my entire campaign. I worked with him before on water, on education in the tribal world. But as I ran for office, he was an excellent mentor, teacher, and he continues to do that. He brings the compassion of affordable health care. He brings the compassion of finding childcare services so we can make sure that our children have childcare, so we can get to work and the moms and dads can get to work. You know, we're also going to be facing one of the biggest financial crises across the state and across this nation. We're going to have to invest in things that are going to help us. We're going to have to pass laws and develop budgets that are going to help our Washington state economy rise and be sustainable. This means investing in digital broadbanding. We need a strong broadbanding program and infrastructure across the state. That is a $3 billion project. Why? We're going to need infrastructure and broadband for our education, because education is changing and it's new. And we're going to need it for our healthcare, because telemedicine is now going to be one of the leading tools that we're going to start using here in the future. So we're going to be quite busy down there. You can tell from the excitement in my voice. And gosh, Debbie, I feel like I'm yelling at you guys. I'm so excited. But it's, I'm coming into my sophomore year, and who would have ever known that a carbon tax with a green revenue bond, with a special tax bond, a green revenue spending program, and a criteria of how to spend it, and investing in green infrastructure for Washington state from here forward would have me as one of the leaders with 8 to 10 other women, and 4 of them women of color. Climate change is leading across Washington state. But what the wonderful part is, the people who worked on climate change before I came in the state legislature, well, I was running bills underneath the Bush administration and the Obama administration, and sitting down with tribal leaders and administrators and state officials. There were a few folks in the state legislature who were talking about carbon tax, carbon cap and trade, clean fuel standards. There was a governor who was working with a collective group of legislators who passed 5 of the strongest climate change bills in the United States. Representative Slatter was one of them. Representative Tarleton was another woman. Senator June Robinson was another woman. Senator Liz Lovelet, Senator Rebecca Saldana. Now today, the bill that I'm working on with the carbon tax, the green revenue package, is being run by 8 to 10 women, and 4 of us are of color. Now that speaks equality and diversity to me. And it's not doing anything more than looking at the men who ran it and the 3 or 4 women who opened that door to sit at that climate change table that was predominantly run by all white males. Now we've got women and women of color saying, hey, move over a little bit. We have some ideas. We want to work with you. We want to share our ideas with you. We have a new face. We have a new voice. We have different languages saying climate change. We have new pathways that we're going to do together. And we're just going to clear that pathway. So there are 20 more who look like me and sound like me who are going to be excited to run for office, who are going to get the education, who are going to get the experience. You know, I got to, I'm doing a lot of campaigning right now for swing districts. You know, I'm partnering up with Attorney General Bob Ferguson and introducing Governor Inslee and sitting down with State Representative Mike Pellicati, who's running for the state treasurer. I'm introducing Gail Tarleton, who's running for the Secretary of State. You know, I'm talking about things like we've got 1 million people in Washington state who have not voted. 1 million people. What are we going to do to get our young people running? What are we going to do today to get those 1 million people to the ballot box? You know, I'm talking about the state treasurer losing $6 billion in pension funds last year. $6 billion. And what are we going to do different? As a candidate who's running unopposed, I've invested all of my time on making sure that I get folks elected into office who are going to make strong decisions. Now, one of the wonderful parts about me also is, you know, I sit in the middle of the floor of the People's House. Literally, my partner is Representative Strom Peterson, who is my seatmate on the floor. What an incredible representative, a great man of integrity. And I'm so blessed to have him as a mentor. He comes out of the Edmonds area. But with me sitting in the people's floor, in the middle of the floor, that's what I am and who I am to the House of Representatives. I'm called upon to pass the HEAL Act, which is a healthy environment for all, to be able to create a proviso that says, how can we better provide a healthy environment for underrepresented communities, and how to make sure they get the programs and the funding and the awareness that these underrepresented communities are having the same opportunities to live in a healthy environment. The #1 city that has the most underrepresented communities, who is living the most polluted area, is Tacoma. So I'm looking forward to partnering with Representative Melanie Morgan on addressing and passing the HEAL Act and running a companion bill with Senator Saldana, and that's HELA or HEAL Act. If you look at it, you'll be excited to see how that's going to be incorporated also into the carbon tax and the green revenue by passing that bill this year. So Debbie, I'm just a little busy. Not a whole lot going on. I have some great colleagues, but in the middle of the floor, you know, it was Speaker Chop and it was other representatives that asked me, hey, Debra, you have a great relationship with Republican leadership. You're able to negotiate. You're able to find common pathways. You can bring us together. I became a leader in the 2000 in my freshman year and engaging with the Republicans on finding a fine balance on bills, such as passing a bipartisan proviso on the HEAL Act. You know, I was able to sit down with my Democrats this year who said, hey, Debra, we love you in the 40th. We're going to continue to support you. Please carry our voices in a good way, and you'll remain in the place you're at. So I'll pause there, Debbie. I know it's been a long day and you've got another speaker. So I raise my hands, and in my Tlingit language, I say, Gunesh Chish. Gunesh Chish, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, lady. Go kick ass.
Well, thank you both, Deb and Debra, and we welcome Lavona. Thank you for making the trip from as far away as you are.
Do I get the award for coming the furthest? Yes, it's evening here, but I'm so glad, and thank Deb Cruz for inviting me. I feel a wonderful honor to be able to be included in your summit today, and Representative Lekanoff. I'm all excited about what's going on there. I mean, you hit some of these, you know, the carbon tax, the green bond, infrastructure issues. That's, you know, don't we wish that Congress was doing that? So I'm here to talk about the sort of the federal side and about the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice.
So
here.
save a seat for Beth.
But pardon?
Save a seat for Beth. We'll get
Oh.
you guys connected when
Yes.
she gets there.
Yes, yes, I look forward to that. We can be allies. Well, it's wonderful to work with all of you, and I hope we have an opportunity actually to work more closely together. We love going to Senator Cantwell and Senator Murray's office. And in fact, my little story about Senator Cantwell's office is the last time that we went lobbying on Capitol Hill, as you know, come March was the last time we were there. And actually offices were starting to close down because of COVID. But we were out there lobbying the second Tuesday of every month, as we usually do. And actually my husband and Fran Hoffman, one of our other advocacy core members, we have about a pool of about 35 of them, we had about 20 out that day, went to Senator Cantwell's office, and we were doing a drop-in. We didn't have any of those right here, right now letters to deliver from folks in Washington, but when it's an important senator, we do stop in, leave our leave behind letter, and seek a meeting if there's somebody available. There wasn't, but so they left their material. The next day, we actually found in the Washington Post, it was listed that in Senator Cantwell's office, somebody was tested for COVID. And so that actually kind of sealed it for us. That was definitely the last time we went up on Capitol Hill. So we are on hold until we don't know when for our direct advocacy on Capitol Hill, but we are continuing with our Right Here, Right Now letter writing campaign. We are making adjustments to our direct advocacy. I'll tell you about that a little bit later, but I thought I'd maybe just change the pace a little bit because at the core of a lot of what we do is that we're raising voices. We're raising UU voices in particular. And this letter writing campaign that we have is really important. And it's something that congregations can participate in. And so I wanted to read a couple of letters, parts of some letters from folks to kind of use a different part of our brain maybe, and you can be thinking also about your stories. We have 4 issue areas that we're currently working on: defending our democracy, immigration, climate, and also economic justice issues. So let's start out with a letter that was from someone in Santa Fe. I'll read excerpts from some of these letters. She said, "Dear Senator Udall, in the long term, what is the most important issue threatening our democracy? Climate change, gun violence, international diplomacy, wealth disparity? All of these concerns are mine, but the foundation of which all political forces move forward or backward are the freedom to make decisions based firmly on the voices of our citizens, all citizens. Please see that the senator fully funds to secure our elections so they won't be influenced or stolen from domestic or foreign threats. Fund defending our democracy by increasing by $250 million to at least $600 million. Our future depends on it." Another message to Senator Burr. Like many people these days, I'm appalled at the level of police brutality being levied against Black citizens. This is not a new phenomenon, but it's been going on far too long without enough white citizens objecting. Our awareness has been heightened, and it's time to provide justice for all. Right here in Greensboro, on September 8th, 2018, Marcus Dion Smith was hog-tied and suffocated by Greensboro Police Department while EMT watched. This was a mental health crisis that could have been handled safely, but instead he was killed, and the medical examiner correctly identified his death as a homicide. I'm convinced that the outcome would have been different if Mr. Smith was Caucasian. If you care about all your people, you will support the Justice in Policing Act. Taking action at the federal level sends a clear message to local and state police that they must root out racial and religious profiling and hold police officers accountable. As a Unitarian Universalist, my faith calls me to advocate for the fair treatment of all human beings. Everyone deserves and respect. We need to be directing our resources into communities to empower people with job training, youth center mentoring, health clinics, preschool programs. I'm talking about poverty. Too much money is going into incarceration and militarization. I urge you to speak out on behalf of everyone you were elected to represent. Another message to Representative Axney from Iowa. This person kind of uses some facts to tell her story. She said, I'm writing you to co-sponsor the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act. Our planet and our state cannot afford any further warming of the planet. Iowa cannot afford another year like 2019 when, due to flooding, the state suffered $1.6 billion in damages. 41 counties were declared disaster areas. The Missouri River took on more than 3 months of what they typically do in 1 year. There were 47 levees that broke in the Missouri River. And the Hamburg Hotel was flooded by 10 feet. HR 5544 is an opportunity to reduce greenhouse gases emissions. Throughout this bill, we each address the dangerous heat trapping HFCs and create jobs at the same time. Please support this bill and co-sponsor it. And finally, a story about immigration. I'm a constituent from Johnson, Iowa, and a member of the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. I would like you to seriously consider supporting the Secure Act. 3 of my grandparents were immigrants from Ukraine at the turn of the century. Luckily, they were never thought that they would be sent back, even though they spoke with a heavy German accent. I can't imagine the heartbreak to our families that they have been deported all of a sudden after living here for 20 years. What would they have gone back to? They know no one at the point and had nothing back there. To return then would have been a heartless tragedy. Thank you for listening to my concerns. I hope you will support the Secure Act and keep families together to protect the fairness that we have come to identify with America. Sometimes people say, oh, I don't know what to say to our member of Congress, or I don't have a story to tell about climate or immigration, but we really do. And I think this is one of the things that, whether it's at the state level, county level, or federal level, we need to raise our voices and remind our members of Congress about people. And that's the faith voice, okay? That's why we're unique. There aren't that many actually denominations that go up to the Hill on a regular basis and speak from their heart and about justice issues. You know, they see a lot of people on the Hill from corporations and businesses, or they want to get, somebody wants to get one piece of the bill, you know, fixed. But we have this opportunity to stay, you know, say what's on our hearts and minds and remind them of the moral obligation. That voice is very important. And they don't hear the liberal religious voice very often. One of the things that, you know, in context kind of also of moving forward about what we can do or not, you might be wondering what the sort of what we call state of play is here in Washington. And I have to say it's very bleak. And I think it's an issue of really the future of our democracy. I put a number of things in the chat, and Norm Ornstein, who's with the American Enterprise Institute's kind of a right of center think tank, has been talking for several years about real threat to our democracy. And we're no longer just within this normal range of difference in policy and sort of politics, but it's become very tribal and nothing is getting through. This, I mean, we saw this with the Republicans, where they had the White House, the House, and the Senate. Same with the Democrats. We're not getting legislation through. We're not making the types. I mean, like 30 years ago, it was different. There was compromise. But that's a dirty word now. And back in 2000, 2009, when President Obama won, there was really a small group of people. I mean, it started earlier, but there was a small group of legislators that said, how can we stop this? And it's become entrenched. If you remember, Senator McConnell had said to President Obama, my job is to make sure you're a one-term president and not to get any appointments through in terms of the courts. We're getting to a point where we're going to have a trifecta here in terms of power being condensed in a way that we've never seen before. And we need to be vigilant. We need to be very vigilant. He actually, Norm Ornstein actually feels that there probably will be violence no matter who is elected. And that with this particular president, we have seen such erratic behavior, and that's him. And actually right now we're seeing some of the worst of it. Literally, he's on steroids, and it's just become literally on steroids. And we're seeing the hate and the spewing of the divisiveness that's there. If there is a close election, where it could very well go to the courts. And as you know, we will probably have a Supreme Court that has tipped in the balance. So this is going to be a really rough time period. And I am fearful, to be honest, that there will be violence. We've seen guns, sales and ammunition sales running, and look at what just happened in Michigan. So this is a time for us to be very vigilant and to be very vocal and to really speak our voices to power. I want to move into, though, some of the things that you can do. And even though this may be a longer period, I mean, it didn't just start with the election of President Trump. Things have been going in a very difficult way for a while in Congress. As you know, it's been really difficult to get things passed. But one of the things where there has been some successes is really when the faith community, when nonprofit public interest groups kind of get together to move forward. So there are some things that UUSJ is doing that I hope you can partner with us in doing. And I thought maybe I'd share my screen here, if that's all right. We have the Right Here, Right Now program, and we do a briefing every month. And we also have the direct advocacy where we invite you to actually do, if you would like to have meetings with their senators or House members, we can help set that up and facilitate that. And the third area that we're really working in very actively now is still mobilizing for the elections, those three areas. So maybe while I talk, I will share screen if this works quickly. Maybe you can see my messy desk here. So this is our website, and I put the link in here. And one of the things that there's a tab here, it's Advocacy tab, and I'm going to go over to that and just show you some of the resources that are available there and what you can find. So every month we have our Right Here, Right Now, and we may be going to a more periodic or every other month, but you will find a link here about, and also we're trying to do things electronically to adapt, because we know the letter writing programs that we used to do on Sundays isn't taking place. So it's a bit more of a challenge for people. But what we do is have, what we do prepare for our partners is a 2-page handout. This is an example of one. This is what we're doing in October, which is this month. Our letters are due on the 15th of the month. So it's appropriations time, and we're doing something with EPA funding for the Environmental Justice Office for EPA and other kinds of issues. So you would get something like this, provide some background, grounding in our faith, what the key message is, some suggested talking points, and a sample letter for you to write. So this is something that you would get once a month. We then have been doing a briefing every month. And there's ways that you can upload your letter directly, or you can batch them for your congregation. And here we're experimenting now with an online tool that allows you to, let me see, I'll go to it real fast. It looks a little like our Right Here, Right Now handout, but you can customize it much further here. There's just an intro kind of little paragraph here, and then you just stuff it. It's kind of like an action alert, which we also do a number of those. So also we have a toolkit available to congregations. It's for letter writing campaigns at whatever level you want to do it. And this was written pre-COVID, but you can adapt this. A lot of what congregations are doing now are doing Zoom meetings, and they'll have a little briefing, and then people have an opportunity even right there to write. So what you can do, this toolkit, I'll tell you some ideas about how to do this. So I encourage you, I put a link in the chat. And then moving on sort of to our elections opportunities. If very happy with your people you're electing and you voted already, we are still engaged with some states, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, even doing some things in Wisconsin. We've partnered, there's a full-time person working on these issues, and we have a link from, it can be from our homepage. It's here, engaging in mobilizing for the elections, and they'll have all of the ideas for it. Also, another link from the advocacy page where it says also here, mobilizing for 2020 elections. We prepared this also before COVID and before the UUA actually had their website up. But there's a little, and this is good after the elections. I mean, this can be for any, there's a leader's guide about how to organize in congregations, mobilization guide. There's some toolkits within that. And also then we have questions for candidates. Oops. This is page 6 of it, which I wanted to bring your attention to, but I'm going to quickly go. So these are a guide for questions and how to engage with candidates, and how to do a forum, how to do bird dogging. And then I wanted to bring to your attention this page in particular. It's page 6 in there, about after the elections. That's when the work really begins. There's a lot of work once you get them started. So as it says, UUs must continue to raise our voices on critical social justice issues. Civic engagement and advocacy is a year-round responsibility. Democracy is not a spectator sport. So we have this little graph here. Hopefully you'll take a look, but this is the part, we're right here in that red part about voting, getting out the vote. And then that's where then we have to really start educating on these issues, being vocal, tweeting, doing whatever, letters to the editor, all kinds of things to keep our issues in the front of the public and our legislators, and share information, with the elected officials. When they do vote, you need to give some feedback, give thank you or whatever kind of feedback, again, through writing, calling, emailing, and then, get engaged in some other kinds of, some of them might be partisan or nonpartisan ways, but think, with your congregations as well about what that whole advocacy, what that whole civic engagement really looks like. Then we have a newsletter, which I encourage you. It only comes out once a month, so you're not going to get too much email from us. But we feature in there, in terms of some of the direct advocacy things, what we're going out on. So that information is previewing. In this particular case, it was up and running by that time this came out. But also what we just went out on, which had to do, for example, on immigration, support. And we did about 8 to 10 meetings, I think it was, with legislators on that. And so you can see we have information on all the 4 areas: immigration, environmental, and climate justice. We have an Indigenous communities program we're doing with UUMFE, in fact, on Monday, and economic justice related issues. So I do encourage you to participate in that. Something that I want to bring to folks' attention, and I'll put this information in the chat also. It's not there now. But this is a group that a lot of Unitarian Universalists have gotten involved in. And I'm spending a lot of my additional time. I'm technically on a mini sabbatical right now. And but even when I come back, I'm going to be working with this organization and doing even more. This is called the Climate Crisis Policy. And they started out as a digest, and they have over 600 solutions and ideas, documents, and things that you are available to you to really figure out, you know, what are some of the most impactful ways to have make a difference. A lot of this is based on drawdown solutions in terms of the materials that they have. I mean, the buckets that the way they've organized. And so in July, they started an initiative to one of their campaigns. So on the link here that for campaigns, you can find that as well, which is to really mobilize. The thought was that faith communities, secular communities, we have to get out of our silos and come together to work on issues. And so it's kind of a network of networks. Individuals can participate, congregations can participate, your team can congregate, and a state action network can actually participate. They have, these are the, I think I have a, whoops, let's go here. These, I will put these in the chat. These are the climate bill package that they've just put forward just a little over a week ago. There's 10 bills there right now. They're going to probably have a couple of more. They have a package for 2020. And you wonder why 2020? They're trying to build momentum. They're trying to get 100 House members to sign on to this so that when 2021 comes, some of these bills will then be reintroduced in 2021, and that we get some momentum going. And if we can all come together under one roof and be working on, ideally, everybody would accept this, all of this whole package, but we understand you can't necessarily do that. There are some bills that will speak to, you know, maybe you, and UUSJ has already been out and supported Climate Stewardship Act, and also the, where is it? The American Innovation and Manufacturing Act, which deals with HFCs. So we're definitely supporting that. But some of the work we're currently doing is to review all 10 of these particular bills. And yes, there will be a bill after a lot more vetting on carbon pricing, which doesn't exist there now. But you can adopt a district. And there are 3 districts that have been adopted in Washington state. You can see here in District 6, District 7, and District 9. And so all the others are looking for adoption. And even if those districts, this line here indicates which, how many bills that of the package that they have either signed on to. But even if a lot of the focus is on 100 legislators who signed on to the Green New Deal, because they're likely, you know, to be supporters, but we're reaching out really to everybody. So, you know, at this point in time, if that's something that interests you, either as an individual, congregation, or whatever, and can get back behind this, you can adopt a member of Congress, and this will be hopefully an ongoing relationship through the 117th Congress, which is right around the corner. So there is, on this page here, let's see, I think there is, there's a link, I'll put it in the chat, about signing up for every 2 weeks on Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern time. They have a general meeting, and they usually have a guest speaker. Could be a Capitol Hill person from one of the bills, you know, from one of the sponsors of the bills, or an organization like Just Transition Alliance spoke to on some of the bills having to do with a just transition and the Environmental Justice for All Act. So it's a very educational opportunity. You can learn a lot about the issues. They have a lot of homework that they've already done. They've drilled down very deep on all of these, bills. So this is part of the climate package, and you can see there's links to sponsorship, plastics, and there is even more information behind it. So get out of sharing that screen. So those are a couple of opportunities and resources that are available to you. And I wanted to spend just a little bit of time talking about sort of making good trouble, and that we really do need voices of people and how we could, maybe collaborate. So I wanted to underscore, I know that you're going to be having another meeting, part 2, in December, about sort of staking out maybe your legislative agendas and where your priorities might be. And some of these resources might be helpful to you, especially at the federal level. And if you really would like to set up a meeting, even for October, with one of your senators, we can help facilitate that. And I did put my email address in there. Even though I'm on sabbatical, I would like to help facilitate and make sure you get to the right folks. I'm going to put that in there again, just in case it got lost. And it is a tough period for us as well when we're so focused on direct advocacy on Capitol Hill, but we are, trying to find these new ways. And we feel it would really strengthen our efforts to go to Capitol Hill, to set up these meetings with staffers. These are usually Zoom meetings with constituents. So we really look forward to that. And since we started, there was kind of started with some of the letters. I kind of wanted to end with some of the letters, but there's also, the Mahatma Gandhi, I'm not sure if I had said it or not, but that we believe in religion and politics aren't connected. They don't understand either one. So we really need to have, a voice, and we need to find our passion about and stick to it and stay in there for the long haul. And there's a quote from one of the parents: engage your children. This is really kind of an important thing to also engage your children in the letter writing as an opportunity. So this one family said, "Our family has talked about racism and protecting the environment, and it means something to see that our kids can write a letter and contribute to counter racism and helping the environment. It also makes them and us proud to be church community members." So I'm going to just finish. Actually, there were 2, but I think I might be running over. And this was to Cory Booker. So this is a letter one of the kids wrote. And he says, "Dear Cory Booker and Bob Menendez, hello, I'm Meredith. And I'm from Maplewood, New Jersey. As one of the citizens that you two are meant to represent, I would like to speak up for support of TPS holders and a pathway to permanent residency for them. I am 15, and I find it absolutely ridiculous that children my age need to worry about their parents being deported and not being able to see their parents. Cory and Bob, my dudes, please show support and help pass the Safe Environment from Countries Under Repression and Emergency Act and the DREAM Act. Thanks for the time you took to read my letter. Sincerely, Meredith. P.S. Thanks for not being bad. Copy, you're my dudes."
Oh, Lavona, thank you. Thank you so very much. What great examples of the power of story. Before we move to the question and answer, I wondered, I saw Lavona writing down while you were speaking, Representative Lekanoff, that she was taking some notes. And I wondered if you wanted a moment, if a question came up from either of you for the other person before we lose this opportunity. You both have a similar kind of get in there and do it energy. So there'd be ways for you guys to stay connected. And this is a moment now. Debra, Lavona, anything that came up when the other person was talking?
I think that Lavona, yours, I have so many letters from youth that really resonated with me when I was working on climate change, when I was working on healthcare, when I was working on developing the workforce development bill with Representative Hansen that provides free education for those students underneath 50,000, and then 75% of your schooling paid for if you're making under 90,000. I think your messaging of make sure your voice is heard and make sure your story's told, because not only do we as elected officials, and I think you all know this, it brings heart to the bill, which makes a difference. When I was oftentimes too, I found when I was testifying, we were testifying on some of the bills, and there were specific letters that, and my LAs read them and I read them. Like, we take time off at the end of the night, like around 7 or 7:30, like when my legislative assistant and I are going through the day's events, she brings in a stack of letters. We just kind of sit down and skim through them. And I've literally stood up in my House Democratic caucus and read a letter that that just passionately is connected to a bill. That helps me, puts me in a good place when I have to testify for that bill on the floor of the people's house, or if I need to ask questions while I'm in committee. So the work that you're doing does not go unnoticed. It's deeply appreciated, and it brings heart to the work that we're doing. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm going to use this piece of the video as a testimonial about this. So many people will say either it doesn't matter, or, well, my legislator or my member of Congress agrees with me, so I don't have to bother. But there are thousands of bills in Congress. They don't have to pay attention to all of them. So number one, it brings attention to it. Number two, like yourself, they look for stories that they can raise up. Sometimes it's in a speech. Sometimes it's, the prayer. We've had this where they, the prayer breakfasts, various ways. Representative Raskin literally called one of the constituents who had written a letter, who was an immigrant from Hungary, to talk to him. They do pull out, and I really do believe that these handwritten or personalized letters elevate to a different place. Yes, they count the numbers when you do it online, and it's an algorithm that'll add up how many immigration and how many of this, and that's important too. It's just like when you call, they'll tally it. But these letters, the staff don't like it because they have to actually read them. And they do pull out letters that for the representatives, and it's the White House, the Obama's office used to do that for him as well. So it is important, and it does. I love what you said, brings heart to the bill. That's beautiful.
Thank you both for that exchange. I know that there may be questions along these same lines, and Larkin is here, I think, to move us into the question and answer period. Larkin?
Hi, yes, we actually are still 4 minutes ahead of schedule. Would you like to move straight in, or would you like to take a short break, Doug?
Well, let's see. I'm looking to see if Lavona or Debra are yawning or anything. No. But I think I'm feeling like there's momentum to just keeping things going. Could I be wrong?
It's been a long day. We're ready to keep moving.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
just a quick note. I did put in the chat box both the web addresses for tracking bills, both on the state level and on a federal level. And I also put in a link to the Washington State Legislature, Information Center. They have a series of films, and this is one in particular on the legislative process, which is really important when we're talking about how we're going to track bills, where they're at, who should we contact at what point in time in order to get them from one place to another place. And they have other additional courses and classes that we can take to kind of get us up to snuff and get us ready to go for the session.
Thank you, Deb. And thank you to both of you, Representative Lekanoff and Lavona. Please, if you have any additional questions, please direct them to your friendly tech Q&A person, and we'll get started. Can you speak to collaboration and how you do that effectively, often with folks who have seemingly opposing views?
Absolutely. So right now we know that carbon tax is going to be one of the largest conversations happening in the state legislature, because we need to be able to develop a progressive revenue practice so we can continue investing in environmental practices, green infrastructure, etc. A carbon tax has not been well taken both at the legislative level and at the initiative level. However, having that conversation with our stakeholders in my community is important. Having that conversation with industry is going to be very important, because industry often says with liquid gas, if you're going to natural gas, if you're going to be taxing us, it's going to be our consumers at the end of the day who are going to end up paying for that. And we need to answer to them. And they don't want to raise the price of their electric bill by $5 a month, because many of our underrepresented communities, our membership can barely pay their electricity bill as it is. Having those meaningful conversations and finding pathways and incentives to bring industry along by saying, let's say this industry, because I have great relationships with them. I remind them, your employees and the people you serve are Washingtonians who want to live in a world where we're reaching our carbon emissions, who want cool and clean water, who enjoy going fishing, who enjoy going hiking, who are suffering from the smoke from our climate fires that are happening across the state. I've had incredible successes in sitting down with industry and saying, what is it that we can better do to provide a pathway for you to sit down and engage with us? Because the people that you're representing are the Washingtonians who want to live in a clean and healthy environment, but then also want a job. How do I engage with your clients, your customers, which is you and I, to be able to live in a healthy place? It's engaging across the board with industry. It's talking to my scientists. It's talking to my legal representatives. It's talking to agencies on how to implement it. It's going back home and talking to my local government, cities and counties, on how they might be impacted by climate change policy. But most importantly, it's coming back and talking to the people on the ground, which is many of you, and saying, send me your letters. Go look at my website and find the information. Feel free to call me. And often, I don't know, I usually run at 3 cell phones. I'm down to 2. I pick up my own phone. I answer my own phone. And I have an LA Kaylee Galloway, who came from Congresswoman Del Bene's office, who has really deep relationships. So I think if that's helpful, Larkin, it's being open and setting a table where there are always extra chairs for people to join and feel free to have the conversation and be able to have an intelligent conversation based on facts, based on science, and based on law. And then finding a financial way to manage that implementation of that law and come back and look at it at the end.
I think, I'm just underscoring for UUs in particular relationships, being a faith group, what can we do and where is our kind of having a moral voice, but finding and reaching out beyond the normal partners that we have. I mean, like industry, like small businesses, there are, get to some of the unions. Small rural farmers, there are a lot that are really working in sustainable, trying to survive in sustainable development. And some of those bills that I mentioned put into the chat area, there's about 4 that have to do with agriculture related issues, is so important. So we have to get, we talk a lot among UUs too about frontline communities, and people who are impacted, telling their, partnering with them. But also, I think that it's really important, whether it's state or federal level, about these unconventional partners, because we know that by ourselves, we can't move anything. It's really going to take this larger tent to move things forward. And about finding the common ground, there was a story we were just telling our new minister at the Arlington Church in Virginia. a story about going to a Republican office, and there was like, not a lot we had in common, but one of our advocacy corps members did go to their website and did find something that we had in common. And the initial sitting down with the staffer was very, felt very
Contentious.
yes. And he was, I think, a little fearful. Also, there were these four older women who could have been his mother. They're very young. And in Congress, these staffers are very young and inexperienced, actually. And they need to get information. That they want information also. So do the educating. But yes, it was like, this is, but then this person who had found the one thing from the website that we had as common ground, it just like was, there was was able, a relaxation. It was the real, to have a conversation. And so again, the relationship building is really important.
I think that's great, Lavona. When I was working climate change underneath the Bush administration, and then working on for Washington tribes during the Obama administration, my tribal chairman would need to go speak to the Republican senators or representatives in Congress. So as a staff person, once a staff person, always a staff person, like my chairman would have one-sheeters on before I walked in. Like I would walk in, I'd have 7 of them. I'm like, okay, he graduated from Baptist school. His son plays basketball. They're involved in this in their community, because oftentimes you'll find that. And having a tribal chairman walk into a Republican office that's predominantly very white oriented and not tribal friendly, to have a chairman have acknowledgement and say, you know what, I believe in faith. I understand where you're coming from. Congratulations. I heard your son's playing basketball. My son does too. Finding that commonality, you'll see them sit down and ease. And what happens for us is we open up our ears, because we feel like we're in a comfortable place and we can find common grounds. We may agree to disagree, but at least he'll hear you. He or she will hear you. And at the end of the day, that's what you're really looking for. Did they get my message and did they hear me, or did they close me off and they're done?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that maybe like the State Action Network or whatever could, really do is sort of the power mapping. What we call the power mapping too is like, who knows whom, so Deb knows maybe the minister of the, Senator Cantwell's office or something, is like, who knows who, because those relationships then can be helpful, or even, and it's can be name dropping also, but, it can be really helpful. And I do want to say that the working together and sharing information, because when you go into a senator's office or whatever, they sometimes they really may want to know what's going on in the state. And if we can convey that, I mean, that's a extra kind of, we become a little bit more valuable, because we'll be asked sometimes, what are we hearing? So if we have a relationship, with folks in the state, obviously it's not easy. In our UU world, we don't have networks that go, even the UUA, the UU Association, they don't have that kind of network to every single congregation that we can have a rapid response system or something. So it has to be very intentional, and maybe on the part, of, folks in, maybe the JUUstice Washington, we could, do that. We could do that work. That'd be exciting.
Thank you both. This next question is kind of actually 3 in 1. How can we best support your progressive legislative process and agenda besides voting? And following on that, is letter writing the best form of communication to our legislators about specific legislation, or are there other ways to communicate? And is there specific civic engagement activities that we should be ready for after the election?
Maybe for me, the first one, any letters of support on how we need to be able to make sure that we're protecting the investments of the environment and working towards climate resilience and investing in pathways to reach our carbon emissions is vitally important. If that is one of the values of your community here, we need to hear that. You have one of the strongest voices down in Olympia, and your vast quality and quantity matters. And by shaping that in your messaging, I think it really helps us move our progressive bills forward. Yes, letter handwriting is really important, as Lavona said. But if you all, so this is what I do when I'm back in my day before I was a state legislature, I would get, 500 people together and I would say, okay, here's your message. We're going to email it for 3 hours. All of you, same message, 3 hours. And you see this, Lavona, and we all send it to a vast amount of legislators that we know need a key vote. And the message is going to be targeted towards if they're against it, how do we get them to vote for it? And if they're voting for it, how do we give them the language they need to say that this is important and vital? We do track those by numbers, as Lavona put it. Like I get a listing every day from my LA that says, these are the top 4 topics in your emails today. Here's the top 5 message. Here's the top 3 messages underneath each 4 of those topics. And this is the amount that you got. And then that's passed on to the House Democratic Caucus. And when we're prioritizing bills, the ones that get targeted and hit the most, we pull those together, Lavona, like if it's going to be healthcare, wolves, and our carbon tax. If we heard in a whole week, if our mailbox got hit by those the most by all the legislators, then that's going to go on to the speaker's office, and she's going to get a reading from all of our offices, and they assess it and say, this week, speaker, those are the 3 topics. We received 7,000 emails, and she gets an assessment, and these are the common platforms that are shared. So there's a method to the madness, and the madness is working. So I hope that's helpful, Larkin, and I nailed your questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just mention too, of course, face-to-face meetings are considered the best to have, and in COVID you can't, but it's in some ways making it easier to do maybe Zoom meetings. We're finding even with members of Congress, they're doing some. So personalized letters, have, they say the second, kind of impact. The Twitter storming, also the social media kind of storming that the representative was talking about is, also then that kind of volume, because they look at, how many mentions they've had in social media or that type of thing. Letters to the editor are can be very useful as well. And so I just mentioned that those carry a lot of weight. And a lot of times you're not only just educating maybe the member of Congress or legislator, is that you're educating the community as well around an issue. So a venue like letter to the editor can become very important. And that's why we also say, like at town hall meetings, you're not just directing that question to in your little statement in question to the candidate, you're educating everybody in that room about your values and what's important and why, or your story.
And Lavona, you're right. The social media aspect of it, if you have an op-ed or an article, if I'm working my bill, you're going to see a lot coming out on the carbon bill, the public safety, et cetera, that I'm working on. My colleagues are going to evaluate whether or not my work has merit to it based on my op-ed, how many times it's been tweeted on, and how many times the information's going out. It's an interesting check mark for fellow legislators, but it really does matter. So if you and if your organization and I were to do an op-ed together, they're going to see the powerhouse that you guys are, and they're going to say, wow, she's got a really strong set of supporters coming from this organization. This is a really valuable piece of legislation we need to work on.
Sounds great.
We've had a couple of questions about how COVID has changed the legislative process. So specific to Washington State, is the 2021 session expected to be virtual? And then more generally, how can we as constituents engage in creative ways in connecting with our elected officials during COVID?
Right now, we're expected to be doing Zoom for the 2021 session. Already we have committee hearings and committee meetings happening, workshops, work sessions. It's going to be part of the norm, I think. We're still working through conversations down in Olympia at the leadership level, but for now, that's where we see 2021 going to be. We don't expect to have, we usually go through a couple thousand bills a session, especially during, this is our long session. This is our January to April. We are going to have we're already being told we have very tight buckets of priorities of what we're going to be able to move through and pass this year because of COVID. Innovative ways, I think Lavona has really shared a good platform. The letters, the emails, take charge on the social media, on the values and priorities that you guys are sharing. My LA, Kaylee and I are already designing thoughtful ways of how to do Zooms between my meetings. So literally, you guys, I'm on Zoom from about 5 or 6 in the morning, starting with back east Zooms all the way till it's Saturday night, and I'm still on Zooms, and I'll probably get that. It's Saturday, right? Yeah, about 8 o'clock tonight. So that's about what it is every day of my life, and we welcome it. I mean, I'm not complaining. I love my life. I love my job, and I'm just honored that the Creator built me strong enough to handle the situation that I'm in today, and that I'm finding value. I am excited, and I pivot quite quickly, Lavona. I'm like, okay, we're not going to be in Olympia. Fine, let's get a plan together. Like, here we go.
I think Congress is going to be kind of pretty much the same as what you've seen. And I think that the Senate, if it shifts to Democratic, you may see more like in the House. They've actually reconfigured office space. Those offices are very small, especially in the House, on the House side, and you're literally pretty much on top of each other. So they've been trying to social distance, even in the offices. So, and then most of the work right now for the staff is remote, is at home. So I don't, expect that a lot will change. They're not going to be doing votes or anything, though. To my knowledge, that's not been discussed at all, to change that they have to show up currently for that.
Thank you. It's all a fascinating process to navigate in these times. Lavona, do you have a sense of which Washington federal legislators are more likely to pay attention to letters? And if so, who might those be?
I really can't say on the House side. I think that when we've gone, all I know is that when we have gone on the Senate side, I can say that both of them have been pretty responsive to when we have had. The Edmondson congregation was kind of partnering with us for a while, about a year ago, but then let's see, I think, forgetting her name right now. They were going to deliver letters at the regionally. They said, keep us on the list, but deliver them. They were going to deliver them regionally. So I don't know if they have some experience. I saw there was somebody here that was from the Edmonds congregation. I don't know if it was Nancy Johnson who was our point of contact for a short time, but no, I don't have a good answer on the House side at all, but both of the senators were responsive.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one final question. This is about direct action or peaceful protests. This questioner said, Speaker De La Rosa said that 20 different states have passed bills to outlaw peaceful protests. Doesn't this violate the First Amendment? Are they being challenged in courts? And how do we continue to act and make our voices heard in the streets?
I guess from the state perspective, we've got, we're reviewing over 65 bills right now having to deal with working towards the evolution of public safety. I have not seen that bill come across, but I know that there's vast amount of conversations that are happening at the state level. Lavona, I'm not, whereas we have congressional members working with us at the state level, I've got tribes working with us at the state level. I'm not hearing that conversation happening from our congressional team, our congressional member, Washington State congressional members.
I believe that there is a suit, but I don't know, with the 20, which, if it's a particular estate or not. It's an interesting question, and it's probably that line of whether there's a private property piece to it versus, on whose land, for example, something might take place. But I don't know any particulars about that issue.
Welcome back. Please share your insights in the chat box so we can read them aloud. Green New Deal and carbon tax or capital gain tax, both federal and state levels, healthcare access crisis on Vashon Island, environmental issues, wildlife, water, air, letter writing campaign, well thought out is needed process. A well thought out process is needed to prioritize issues and work with Faith Action Network, work with the Revenue Coalition, and the importance of forming coalitions. Prioritize revenue, not cuts, to fix our upside down state tax system, pass a carbon tax and capital gains tax. Our group talked about the website leg.wa.gov that has been an easy comment place that can be easily tallied by legislators. Rapid response at state and federal level is intriguing. There's a link shared in the chat box, uua.org/widening/guide. I believe the inherent worth and dignity of every person, not every idea. 5 concrete ways to support trans UUs. Trust report, executive summary, TRUUST report. Experiences of trans Unitarian Universalists report on the 2018 survey of the trans UUs. These links are all shared in the chat. Capitol Hill experience speaks to importance of letters, legislative staff know which are part of organized campaigns, so personalized letters are better if possible. Somewhat leery of email campaigns, and stock letters are better than nothing, even and especially if the legislator is already voting the way you want. Bill tracking resources often make it difficult to find what you want. You need to already know the name or number. One idea, call the legislator's office to ask about bills and start relationship that way. Enforcement is a problem with growth management acts. Often citizens need to stay on top of who is following which rules. Port commissioners have an unusual amount of power. The Port Commission started a campaign to solicit new names for unnamed parks. West Side UU, West Seattle is encouraging the Port Commission to name some after the Duwamish peoples. Our group was impressed with Representative Lekanoff's recognition of her predecessor's work in legislation and representation, and recognizing the importance of infrastructure that is green and proactive to the issues of climate change, such as flooding and wildfires. And Lavona got a question about rapid response idea. Is it tough to implement, but individual congregations can have significant impact? Lavona asked if you are interested in deepening relationship with federal representatives and senators, then we can work with her office. And we have that contact information that we will reshare for you. Or if Lavona is still on the call, she can do that as well. Letter writing with heart makes a stronger impact. Our legislators are people too and going through the same issue we are, and maybe more open to hearing our point of view. And do we have any final thoughts? Concerns about ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. Arrange Zoom with your representatives when possible. A peace group did this. And a correction to above is that Westside has encouraged the port to select the name the Duwamish choose. Thank you.
But how do you, is ALEC, I imagine it's a force more powerful in some ways. Is it?
Unfortunately, it still is. Although there are a number of companies that have left, you know, out of some peer pressure, and some years ago, Common Cause had a big campaign, national. I think they're still one of the best organizations that probably is tracking the legislation, but you know, that comes out, you know, so if people aren't familiar, it's a very conservative, you know, sort of businesses belong to it. It's a big lobbying group, and they pre-prepare legislation, you know, for especially at the state level, and you see it popping up all over the place, you know. And one of the problems, whether it's good legislation or bad legislation, because staff at the federal level in Congress, for example, has been pretty decimated over the years, ever since Newt Gingrich, the committee staffs and that have become smaller. They become more dependent on outside organizations. We were actually asked when we went to visit one of the committees on the Senate side, I was stopped on the way out, and they said, you know, come to us with your legislation. I mean, you know, I was, you know, I'm kind of laughing under my breath. We have no capacity for that at the time, but it was a real light bulb about, you know, they are dependent that way for good or for bad, you know, on the outside, you know, and businesses can afford it. You know, they have all those corporate lobbyists and groups like ALEC, and they say, and also it has over the years pivoted to the leadership rather than committees putting legislation together. Back in the old days, legislation, you'd have committee hearings, you'd hear that, you know, they'd have committee hearings, all this came up this way. But now you'll often hear it's the leadership that develops the legislation with outsiders. And you'll hear legislators saying, I haven't read the bill yet. And that's why. And that's very often the case. Because it's coming.
Well, and with particularly the House side having so many more women, are you feeling, it would seem like that would be a tangible, you know, discernible kind of change in the atmosphere there. Hope. Is it still kind of business as usual somewhere?
Well, yeah, maybe somebody's tracking that maybe more than I've noticed. A lot of, like for Virginia, we have several that came out, but they're possibly more behind the scenes in terms of how they engage. I don't see it that much as the outer facing part of it, but you know, that what the public would necessarily see, especially with the newer ones that came on, because they tend to be quieter. It's just kind of comes with the turf that you maybe aren't, well, some of them. I won't name names, but you know, some of that more traditional quiet the first year when you're a freshman, that type of thing. But I think behind the scenes possibly, but I just haven't really noticed that much out front. Sorry.
I see that Deb Holland has had some success with working with Kennedy in Massachusetts. And so there's some other connections happening that you might not think about at first. And then, oh, that's interesting.
I think they're more likely to reach out also across the aisle even. I think I hear that.
So when it does free up and the COVID thing changes and everybody's starting to move around again, do we stay in your backyard in tents? Well, how do we get together in DC? Pardon me, I didn't really invite ourselves over, right? But imagine, you're going to be getting together with smaller groups, right? A little bit more once you get back from sabbatical.
Well, the organization is continuing to work, and I've been at this for a number of years, so the time has kind of come to pass the baton on as well, and they're going through a strategic planning process, and they are moving into being more of a national organization, so the governance structure will change. And so I have said that I'm backing out, but not, backing up, but not out. But I think that some of our work will be coming to a natural end in December. So I don't really know what will continue on that. And I'm just finding my passion and energy does want to be around the environmental and climate crisis related issues, whether that takes me with UUs or outside of UUs. I'm just going to kind of follow that. I do work with the Washington Interreligious Staff Community. It's called WISC. Which are really paid people in Washington that do this as a day job. And there's about 20 working groups, one of which is on energy and ecology, which I sit in. The UUA asked me some years ago to do that. And I do it where both the UUA hat and that hat. So I would like to continue doing that, if they so deem I can, because they meet every couple of weeks, and they are the people that do a lot of the lobbying, that we can join together to do Hill lobbying. And they're doing Zoom meetings with, members of Congress and things like that. And I will mention that I see Dick Burkhardt is here in the UUs for Just Economic Community. Every 2 years, we've usually done a conference in Washington, DC. Of course, with COVID, I don't know if their plans, they usually sort of they're the leaders. We kind of do the back end lobbying part, but whether they'll be doing that, virtually or not or maybe not. We did it in 2019 was that. So this would be kind of a year to maybe do that work. So stay tuned on that. I'm sure Dick will let you know, but we could set up virtual meetings. The Friends National Committee and Legislation had a big meeting with their young adults in March, like just a couple weeks out, and they set up in no time, like 80 meetings. It was a huge undertaking. They have a lot of staff to help with that. It can be done.
Thank you for sharing so much, including your personal plans for the future. We do look forward to staying in touch with you. And I'm going to turn it over now to Deb and John to help us get into the evening.
We didn't plan any elaborate conclusion to this summit, but we want to thank everybody for sticking with us for all this time. I think that there's going to be a lot of really concrete suggestions for the way forward out of today's presentations. And that's actually quite different than what's happened at other summits. So I think it's really a good thing that we've got this second session planned for the summit, because I think there'll be a lot of opportunities to really set priorities and figure out program initiatives that will really help the organization going forward. I also basically want to thank Larkin and Sahar in particular for doing all the Zoom keeping, and basically also to thank Erica for helping with the Zoom. And so that's basically it in terms of our program for today. And I think we were going to end with the playing the We Shall Be Known one last time before we go, and that's basically it. So thank you very much, everybody, and really enjoyed and gotten a lot out of these 2 days actually now. So that's it.
Thank you, Lavona. We will be in touch.
Oh, please, yes. Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Yay.
Thanks.
Lavona, I just have to let you know that the friends that I'm staying with here wondered, who's up next? Is she back on again? Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your work in putting this together. I know this is a huge undertaking. Yeah, must be relieved.
Yes.
There were some special assistants that came in and helped along the way, Larkin, Sarah, Erica.
Wonderful work.
I
Great.
take it that Sahara woke up eventually, or what was going on?
I think she's. Are you there, Sahar? No.